a heart-piercing word. One afternoon in May, Margaret Johnson, a woman living in upstate New York, grabbed her carry-on bag, ready to head to the train station to visit her daughter in the city. Just then, the phone rang. From the other end of the line came her daughter's slightly cold voice. "Mom, please don't come anymore. I'm swamped with the kids. Honestly, it's a burden when you visit." The words were like a knife twisting in Margaret's heart. Each time she had visited, she had carefully chosen gifts and looked forward to their time together. To Margaret, it felt like the end of their connection. She made the decision to cancel her train ticket. It wasn't that she didn't want to go. She didn't want to be a burden. After that, Margaret sent a box to her daughter. Inside were dozens of unused train tickets from the past 5 years. In a small, quiet town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, lived a woman named Margaret Johnson. She was 68 years old. In the tranquil mountain air, she lived a modest life, her days unfolding in familiar routines. Since her youth, Margaret had dedicated herself to her family. After marrying, she supported her husband and raised her daughter, working tirelessly and always offering a warm smile. She never sought extravagance. She simply enjoyed preparing delicious meals, carefully folding laundry, and wishing for her family's health and happiness. She embodied the spirit of a classic American mother. But as time passed, her husband passed away in 2014, and Margaret lived alone. She sustained herself on the small pension her husband had left, combined with her own modest savings, living simply but with dignity. Her one monthly joy was visiting her daughter and her young grandchildren in New York City. "I wonder if I'll see them this month," saying this to herself. Margaret would prepare, month after month, her daughter's favorite homemade cookies and pack a small envelope of money for travel expenses. But each time, the response was a brusque, "I'm busy. Maybe next time." "Mom, things are hectic here. It's difficult when you come unexpectedly," Margaret never argued. She quietly hung up the phone and, as if nothing had happened, carefully stored the packed bags away in the closet. However, deep inside that closet, hidden from view, was a collection of unfulfilled hopes, 12 children's dresses, never worn. Every year for her grandchildren's birthdays, she carefully selected a dress, each carefully chosen and bought. A blue gingham check, a white dress with embroidered butterflies, a navy blue dress with silver threads, all neatly folded and waiting patiently. Inside their wrapping paper, "Maybe this year they'll wear these dresses." Filled with such hopes, these dresses accumulated year after year, but they were never seen. Margaret knew this or pretended not to notice. It was hard to say, but after quietly closing the closet door, the expression on her face was distant and wistful. A mother, no matter how old, always waits. One day she uttered that to herself. When neighbors greeted her, she always replied with a cheerful, "I'm doing well," attended every community gathering, and maintained her neighborhood relationships. But no one seemed to notice the loneliness, the empty space in her heart. Margaret's planner was filled with detailed notes, including the dates, train schedules, and connecting stations. "I think my daughter said she'd be free on this day." Thinking this, she meticulously planned each trip, packed her bags, and checked the bus schedule to the train station. But then, a call just before her trip. "I'm sorry, it's not going to work out." That line became her usual answer. Yet, she never became angry. She must be busy. Raising children is hard. And so, putting the needs of others before her own feelings and suppressing her own loneliness had become normal for her. Saying nothing, asking for nothing, just waiting. That was Margaret Johnson's life. This story begins with her silence. One spring morning, as Margaret Johnson gazed at the small daffodils blooming in her garden in her home in upstate New York, she murmured softly to herself. Next month is her birthday, isn't it? For Margaret, who had never forgotten a family anniversary in all her years, her granddaughter's birthday was a special day. From the 12 dresses she had stored deep in her cedar chest, she took out the one she planned to give this year and gently smoothed it out with her kind hands. "I wonder if this lavender color will suit her this year." The fabric was adorned with lightly drawn cherry blossoms, and it had a hopeful quality, like the soft light of spring. Margaret prepared to include a handmade good luck charm and a letter along with the dress. That afternoon, she slowly picked up the telephone receiver. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed the button and listened to the dial tone. "Hello, dear. I was thinking of coming to New York for your daughter's birthday next month. I'd love to see her again." However, the voice that came back from the other end of the line was completely different from what Margaret had expected. "Oh, Mom? Now's really not a good time for you to come. Things are crazy here every day, and I'm barely managing to take care of the kids. Honestly, it would be an extra burden if you came now." For a moment, there was a silence as if time had stopped. Margaret couldn't say anything for a while, but the words she finally managed to squeeze out were just one sentence. "Oh, I see. I'm sorry." After the call ended, she couldn't move from the spot for a while, and she quietly put the receiver down. The sound of the clock in the living room, which she had been familiar with for many years, sounded unusually loud. "A burden, am I?" As Margaret repeated this in her mind, a faint glint of light appeared in her eyes. The next day, a neighbor happened to pass by and saw Margaret repacking her luggage on the porch. "Are you going to New York again? People over there seem to be busy these days, if you force yourself to visit. Too often you might end up being a nuisance, don't you think?" The words were casual, but they pierced Margaret's heart deeply and heavily. Why? Yes, I suppose so. But at least for her birthday, she gave a small smile, but deep in her eyes, complex emotions were hidden. After that, she untied the luggage and returned the lavender dress she was holding to its original place. She left the letter unsealed in the drawer. Only the handmade charm remained alone on the table. Sitting by the living room window, Margaret quietly gazed at the garden scenery. The spring breeze swayed the curtains, and the sunlight streaming onto the veranda was gentle, but her heart was filled with emptiness and coldness. Am I no longer needed by her? Such thoughts crossed her mind, but she couldn't confide in anyone and had to keep it to herself. Those words, "Mom, please don't come," that one sentence left a deep wound in her heart. It felt as if the bond between mother and child, which had been built over the years, was quietly unraveling. Even so, Margaret didn't blame anyone and tried to convince herself that she was at fault. Maybe I was being too intrusive. At night, even after getting into bed, she couldn't fall asleep easily, and she gazed at the ceiling, tracing back to old memories. The day she held her daughter's small hand and went to the park. The time she stayed up all night to nurse her daughter when she had a cold. The day of her graduation, when she held back tears as she saw her off. Everything seemed like events from a distant past. Such nights continued for many days. As spring came to an end, the dandelions in the garden turned into fluff, and they flew away on the wind. Margaret Johnson watched them, a sense that something was shifting deep within her. Perhaps, she thought, this is what closure feels like. She tried to convince herself of this, as she quietly continued her days. One afternoon, after a rain shower had passed, Margaret Johnson found herself opening a drawer in her bureau. The creaking sound of the wooden drawer echoed softly in the dimly lit room. It was as though she was forcibly opening something that had rusted shut in the depths of her heart. Her hand reached for a small box tucked away in the back. The cardboard box had faded with age, but it was wrapped carefully, indicating how precious it was to her. Slowly, she opened the box, revealing neatly arranged bundles of train tickets. 58 of them. Round-trip tickets from Albany to New York City. Each one, despite the passage of time, still held its weight. But all of them were torn in half. She gently picked one up, her eyes narrowing as she examined it. May 3rd, 2016. The day she promised she'd come pick me up. Then, another. July 17th, 2017. The day she told me on the phone she was looking forward to it. Tiny words, written in pencil, marked the corners of the tickets. Each one a memory, recorded with faint hope. Margaret picked up each bundle of tickets, one by one, tracing them with her fingertips as if they were precious gems. Then she knelt on the floor and spread them out on the rug. There were so many. she murmured to herself unintentionally. The tickets had accumulated over the years. To her, they weren't just a means of transportation, but promises of reunion, evidence of her belief in her bond with her daughter. Yet every single one of them remained torn and unused. I'm not wanted if I go, but if I wait, maybe someday. With that thought in mind, Margaret must have bought a ticket each time, only to tear it up and store it away in the drawer. She stared at the tickets in silence for a long time, as if confirming the past self reflected in them. She remembered the day she wrote the first ticket. It was shortly after her husband had passed away, and she was looking forward to seeing her daughter and grandchildren to fill the emptiness of her days. Come anytime, you know I'm waiting. She still remembered her daughter's voice clearly. But that promise was never kept, and each time, Margaret would tell herself, she must just be busy next time for sure. However, when faced with the reality of 58 torn tickets, something inside her collapsed with a sound. Perhaps it was her desire to believe, perhaps it was her pride as a mother, or perhaps it was the small hope of wanting to see her child smile just one more time. Margaret quietly sat there, gazing at the tickets spread out on the rug. A small sob began to echo through the room. I was waiting all this time. It wasn't a word of blame directed at anyone. It was simply a moment when her accumulated feelings overflowed to the point where she couldn't contain them herself. The wish contained in each ticket. The day will come when my child will greet me with a smile. But that wish had been torn up 58 times. Even so, Margaret had believed to the very end. Someday, she'll definitely greet me properly. But reality was different. The words of hope, written on the tickets, may have just been a selfish dream. She quietly returned the tickets to their box and gently closed the lid. Her hands were trembling slightly. Thank you, she murmured, holding the box with both hands, and gently placed it in front of the family altar. There, a portrait of her late husband stood watching over her. You probably understand. I really did try my best, didn't I? The gentle smile on her face, marked with traces of tears, held a certain quiet resolution, as if she had finally come to terms with something. From that day forward, something undeniably began to change within Margaret Johnson. Even after several days, the bundle of tickets remained deeply etched in Margaret's mind. Each time she glanced at the box she had placed on the mantelpiece, the feeling she had suppressed deep inside surged like a tidal wave. That evening, Margaret sat at her desk and pulled out a sheet of stationery. She picked up her fountain pen, one she had used for many years, took a deep breath, and slowly began to write. To Michael, please forgive me for writing to you so suddenly. I've thought so many times about how I might have been too demanding over the years. But there's something I absolutely need to tell you. The pen, held in her trembling hand, paused occasionally, but moved with unwavering purpose. I won't be bothering you anymore. Please protect your life, your way of doing things. I understand things well enough now. I've come to realize that I've become an unnecessary presence in your life. Margaret paused there, setting down the pen for a moment, and picked up a small envelope she had placed beside her. Inside was a portion of the savings she had been diligently setting aside, approximately US 35,000. This money was meant for your children's future. I hope it will be of some small help. Then, she gently placed another envelope next to the stationery. It was a small photo album. Inside were photographs of her grandchildren that she had secretly taken over time. A smile I happened to see in front of the school gate. Their appearance at the field day, watched from afar. Their backs as we happened to pass each other on the train platform. None of these were taken by request. They were moments she wanted to capture and keep in her memory. Born from the conflict of wanting to see them but being unable to do so. On the back of each photo, she had written the date and a brief note. I'm relieved to see that they seem to be doing well today. They looked so strong as they were running. Grandma is always watching from afar. Margaret gently closed the album and placed the stationery and envelopes in the box. It was the box that had held the train tickets, the proof of hope that would never be used. Now, it held proof of farewell. The following morning, she went to the post office near the train station. There was a certain resolve in her hand as she handed over the sealed package. "I'd like to send this with delivery confirmation, please." The clerk nodded and began the process, while Margaret quietly watched. On the way home, the wind was a bit chilly, and the sky was lightly veiled with clouds, but her face held a serene stillness. That night, she cried in her bed for the first time in a long while. But these weren't tears of pure sadness. They were born from a strange sense of relief after letting something go. It's okay to stop trying so hard now. Margaret. It was as if she was gently speaking to herself. For the next few days, there was no contact from her daughter. Not that Margaret expected a call. She simply felt it was enough that she had conveyed her feelings properly. However, even in the silence, she felt a kind of emptiness, like a hole. Somewhere within her, the sound of the television, the sounds from the kitchen, everything seemed distant, and only the occasional sound of the wind seemed to be close to her heart. Each time Margaret watered the flowers in her garden, she recalled the smiles of her grandchildren in the photographs she had sent with the letter. "I hope these feelings reach them." It was a quiet wish, not as a mother, but as someone who was simply praying. Gifts, visits, words, all had been rejected for so long. But in choosing to quietly accept the end, without denying her own love, there was a deep dignity. If the bundle of train tickets was proof of continued waiting, then this package was proof of the resolve to let go. And that was the moment when Margaret Johnson, in her life, most quietly, yet most certainly, screamed. A week passed. One morning, Margaret Johnson lay quietly in her room at the small town's hospital. No one knew she had collapsed at home, only to be discovered by chance, by a delivery driver, who immediately called an ambulance. The diagnosis: malnutrition. This was never a light matter for the elderly, especially considering Margaret's living situation these past few months. It was, perhaps, an inevitable outcome. In her wallet, only about 30 remained. It was the last of her money. Beside the hospital bed sat a small paper bag. Inside were candies carefully wrapped in gift paper and a tiny pinwheel made of construction paper, both intended as gifts for her grandchildren's birthday. Margaret, her eyes barely open, gazed at the ceiling, breathing slowly as if trying to remember something. In her hand, she clutched a worn notebook. It was her diary, which she had kept for many years, filled with daily events, feelings, and small emotional shifts. The day her daughter first stood, the last summer she spent with her husband, the day she saw the pictures from her grandson's christening. There, words she could never say to anyone were quietly written. That day, the hospital room door swung open with a bang. A woman rushed in, looking panicked. It was her daughter, Michael. In her hand, she clutched the box her mother had sent. The shock when she opened the box: a bundle of old train tickets, about 35,000 on in cash, and an album filled with pictures of the grandchildren. And that letter: "I'm sorry. All I've done is disrupt your life." Those words pierced her heart, leaving Michael unable to sleep, immediately heading back to her hometown. Entering the hospital room, Michael stood frozen by the bed. Margaret's cheeks were gaunt, her hands bony, looking fragile, as if even a breeze could break her. Unable to bear the sight, Michael choked up, calling her mother's name. "Mom," slowly opening her eyes. Margaret remained blank for a moment before finally smiling. "Why, oh, you came." Hearing those words, tears streamed down Michael's face. I'm sorry. I didn't understand anything." Margaret quietly shook her head, whispering softly, "It's okay. I'm not blaming you. I'm glad. You seem to be doing well." Then, before her daughter, she gently offered the diary. "You can read it." Hesitantly, Michael opened the diary. The first page read, "Skipped lunch again today. But I saw my grandchildren from afar in front of the train station. That alone fills my heart. On another day, made a charm today. May it protect them if anything ever happens." And on the last page, "I'm hungry. But I saw my grandchildren's smiles in the pictures, and that alone is enough." Each word was filled with deep love, quiet loneliness, and, above all, the resolve of a mother. Clutching the notebook, Michael sobbed as she held her mother's hand. Why didn't you say anything?" Margaret smiled gently, replying with only one word. "If I told you, you would suffer, wouldn't you?" Michael couldn't say anything in response. Such a quiet, such a deep love. From that day on, Michael and her children visited the hospital every day. Margaret's condition gradually improved, and she began to smile again. However, even in that recovery, there was a sense of quiet preparation for farewell. Margaret talked with Michael every day, but rarely spoke of the past. Instead, she began to talk about the future. "If you're doing well, that's all that matters to me. Your children, they'd grown so much. They're going to be kind people." Her daughter, tears welling up in her eyes, nodded repeatedly. And in her heart, she made a solemn promise. "I will never, ever leave my mother alone again." That vow, spoken softly yet with unwavering conviction, became the first step toward reclaiming the lost time. About a month later, Evelyn Johnson was discharged from the hospital. After what seemed like both a long and short hospital stay, she stepped out of the entrance and into the sunlight, her daughter standing right beside her. "Mom, let's go home together. From now on, we're going to live together in New York City." Slightly taken aback by the offer, Evelyn responded with a gentle smile and a nod. Saying goodbye to her little house in the Appalachian Mountains where she had lived alone for many years, she quietly embarked on a new chapter of her life. The day they arrived at her daughter's place in New York, her daughter had prepared a sunny room just for Evelyn. By the window, there was a small chair, a vase, and a family altar. Next to it, her daughter placed a box. It was the train ticket box, filled with 58 unused round-trip tickets, and the memories of so many unfulfilled promises that went with them. Her daughter gently stroked the box and said, "This box is something our family must never forget. I don't ever want to forget how long you waited for us, Mom." Evelyn quietly closed her eyes and nodded slowly. "Thank you. But every time I look at this box, it reminds me that back then, I wasn't just a mother, I was the one waiting." A quiet moment settled over the room. Life that followed wasn't filled with extraordinary events. In the mornings, they made scrambled eggs together. In the evenings, they watched TV while listening to her grandchildren's stories. At night, they clasped their hands in front of the family altar and quietly ended the day. A very ordinary daily routine. But for Evelyn, it became the most luxurious time she could have imagined. One day, her grandson came into Evelyn's room and, looking curiously at the train ticket box, asked, "Grandma, what's this?" Evelyn smiled slightly and replied, "These are tickets from when Grandma was planning to go see someone she really, really missed." But why didn't you use them?" "Well, there were a lot of reasons. But since I'm here with you now, that means I used them all up." The grandson, still not fully understanding, smiled happily and sat on her lap. Feeling his warmth, Evelyn gently closed her eyes. "I don't need anything else, just having this time is enough." The train ticket box placed in the room was no longer just a symbol of the past. It became a gift for the future, quietly asking how to live in the present. Sometimes, there are things we can't say, even to those we love. Sometimes, kindness is hidden in silence. And sometimes, by the time we look back, there's already a train we can no longer catch. Are you conveying something to someone important to you right now? Are you aware of the presence beside you that is quietly offering you love? Please, let this story be an opportunity for you to stop and remember, just one more time, the presence of a mother waiting far away, the meaning of a gift you haven't received, the weight of the wish written on the back of a torn ticket. And now, to you, who have watched this story to the end, we would like to quietly ask you, have you unknowingly pushed away someone who loved you? Please share your story in the comments section. A moment when you noticed a kindness you had overlooked, or a memory of you quietly waiting for someone. Surely it will touch someone's heart and create a new connection. Thank you for watching. If this story has lit something in your heart, please give it a like or share. From now on, we will continue to tell quiet miracles that reach your hearts. Please subscribe to the channel and we hope to see you again in the next story. So, until next time, may our paths cross again in another heartwarming tale. Remember, a single word from you might just save someone's tears. Now is the time to find that little bit of courage to speak up. Your voice matters. Don't hesitate to reach out and connect, because a simple act of communication can make a world of difference in someone's life.